Witness I produced, and then Michelle came. He added drums. RG was supposed to have a verse. He never sent it to me, but we had written this pre-hook together that I really loved. And Wande hopped on it and she killed it. She really gave it that sauce. This is a lot of people's favorite one. I really love how that song turned out. And I want people to be able to embrace that. Like, I don't have anything to prove to, not on some like, I'm gonna just do what I want no matter what.
Right.
But you're not the person I have to prove my faithfulness to. Yeah. You're not my final judge. You're not the one who gets to decide if this is. So I'll hear from you if you have critique, but at the end of the day, I filter that critique through who I really have to answer to. And if I spend my life trying to answer to everybody like they're God, I'm gonna just drive myself crazy.
Yeah.
By God's grace, I dropped my 7th album in 2022, and I decided to call it The End. It's a project I am very proud of. So I wanted to make this podcast to drive home, the heart behind everything that I wrote. This is the End.Notes podcast. Chapter 1, play this when I'm gone. Do you ever think about, what kind of legacy you're gonna leave behind? Like, do you ever think about, how people will remember you or think about you or the impact you'll have on your family or the church?
I never really thought about it at all until Sam passed. And then after Sam passed, I think about it, but I almost never think about it in terms of like ministerial like contributions, right?
Yeah.
So I never think at all about when I'm gone from the church, like house corner, like are they gonna paint a mural, right? Am I gonna have a portrait in the joint? I tend to think about it more from like a family and a friend standpoint. So I often do sit back and think like, are the people in my life that I'm closest to, like, have I really impacted them, or how are they gonna talk about me when I'm gone? And what was it about your brother dying that made you think about legacy? My brother Sam, he was 32 years old at the time, healthy, best shape of his life, just suddenly passed, unexplained, unexpected, was pastoring a church, Memphis, pastoring alongside Crawford's, right, left behind, 3 beautiful kids, 5, 3 and 1. I'm the wife, and so it was crazy because it was, as you think about in between the two of us, right, we were both pastors, but throughout our time, like I had the larger kind of ministerial platform in terms of, where I spoke and writing and opportunities and churches planted and all of that stuff. But it was like, man, his reach just as a person, right? He spent time in Dallas. He spent time in Memphis. We grew up in Houston. And I remember like you came to the service on Sunday in Memphis after he passed, and just what the worship service was like there. Like that day is still just etched in my head.
Yeah, me too.
And then a week later, we did it all again in Houston.
Yeah.
And the church that we grew up in, it was full of people, and they just talk about the impact that he had. And almost none of it was from what he did from any type of stage or thing like that.
Yeah.
And then buried him in Dallas, and it was the same thing there. And so here you have this person who was relatively unknown in the grand scheme of the way that we think of people being known.
Yeah.
But to this day, I was just in Chicago a few weeks ago. I met this brother for the first time, and he's like, yo, I knew your brother in Memphis, and just started to talk about what he left behind. And so after he passed, that just made me feel like, I don't want the only things that people say about me to be the things that I do from a state. Like, man, I really miss John. John was a great preacher.
Dog, that's my worst fear.
Right.
I'm not even, no lie, like, my worst fear is like people who are far away enough to be impacted by my gifts.
Right.
Would be the people who have the most great things to say about me.
Right.
And that the people close to me would be a lot more timid and slow in their praise of me. Not like they just think I'm the most amazing person of all time. It's just, I'm terrified of being gifted and impacting people far away and being useless to the people near to me.
That's it. I don't want to be remembered for my gifts.
Yeah, bro. That's right.
Yeah.
And like, I just feel like it would be so disappointing to get to the end of my life and be like, oh, Trip, we loved your music. It was so helpful. My kids was like, he was all right.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's just like, because that feels like a truer gauge of the kind of person you really was.
Right.
Like the people who see you up close, that's people who know you for real.
Right.
I can post highlight reels on social. I can put out stuff and make myself sound good or whatever, but a more true gauge of who I really am feels like people close to me.
Yeah.
I feel like there's something about death, bro, that does sober you and makes you think more about that kind of stuff. Like even if it's not somebody close to you. Like I remember when Kobe died. I was at church. I had taught that morning, and then I was like standing outside talking to people, I think, after, and somebody was like, you know, Kobe died. And I was like, what? And I just kept having a conversation, but I thought I misunderstood them because it sounded like they said Kobe died. Right. And then I saw it later, and it was just like, I don't know, it was just wow. It was just unexpected out of nowhere. And I feel it in myself like, man, just something about death that's just a reminder, especially when it's someone who's young, when it's unexpected, and when it's like you could never have guessed it was coming. Right. It's just a reminder like, yeah, same for you. Right. You just have no idea. Yeah. That's the thing about time. Like we want to use it well. We want to budget it. So in that way it's like money, but the way it's not like money is you have no idea how much you have. So you're trying to use it well without knowing exactly how much I have this much left to spend. Right. Time-wise, it's like you don't know how much life you got at all. So you just want to be as faithful as possible in this moment. And there's so much petty stuff, bro, that we spend time worrying about, spend time doing, that death just, I don't know, it just shows how dumb and petty it is. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And it could sound like weird to people to think there's something good about being close enough to death. Right. For it to, it's like death is unnatural. It's not good. It's a part of this fallen world. Right. But it does clarify things. There's a reason in Ecclesiastes. I keep bringing up Ecclesiastes because I'm in it. There's an album to me feels more like Ecclesiastes than Ephesians.
I agree.
Know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
These realities of life in a fallen world that's broken. But there's a reason why in Ecclesiastes the preacher keeps bringing up, when he's telling you something is meaningless, he's like, yeah, but just so you know, you're going to die. He's like, oh, they got all this money. But also, we came into this world naked and we're going back out the same way. Right. The poor man and the rich man are going out the same way. Right. They're both going into that grave. Right. Neither of them can take this money with them. Right. And there's something clarifying about like, oh, this isn't just a thing that continues on forever. Right. So let me think through what really matters. Do you feel like that, like doing funerals, there's something to me that's even more impactful about trying to love and walk with other people through that. I don't know, it just hits you in a fresh way that there's a finality that you can't do anything to fix. Yeah. And you're trying to help people navigate and pick up the pieces in the midst of it.
It forces everybody, myself included, to be reminded of not just the finality of death, but the fickleness of everything else. Yeah. The impotence of it. Yeah. You know, everybody comes in and lives life with all of their goals and agenda. But then when you're at a funeral, you're reminded when you look into that casket oh, everybody with money has
right.
a problem that money can't solve.
That's right.
Oh, snap. Everybody with beauty and charm in here, look, you have a problem that beauty and charm
That's right.
cannot solve. So it reminds us how much all of the paths towards joy that we're trying to like run down, it reminds us, no, listen, actually all of those paths, even the good ones, are dead ends, because they're going to lead you to a place where it's only going to go so far.
Yeah.
And I think it forces the honest person to say, all right, there's got to be something more. I think the people that aren't maybe as honest or hopeful, it causes them to just double down on the stuff they put their hope in and say, well, maybe there's a way that I can break through this dead end.
Chapter 2, Real Legacies.
Crawford, we're going to spend some time and talk about legacy, but one of my favorite stories, one of the things that shaped me, is to hear you talk about, I believe it was your grandpa. Was it your grandpa? Was his name Peter? My
great-grandfather, Peter, was a slave.
Yeah.
I'm old, but I ain't that old, Reverend.
No. So just to hear you talk about him and the word and how that passed on to you, and we're going to spend some time and just talk about how you've done it, and just wanting to learn and glean.
Oh man,
from you as we can. Crawford, tell us about your great grandfather.
Yeah, well, I wish I had met him. He's long gone. My great grandfather, my dad's grandfather, Peter, was a slave, and my father was the youngest boy of 14 kids, and my dad was born in February the 13th, 1914. So it was his grandfather, Peter, who was a slave. And my father remembered him because Peter lived to be an old man, and Peter used to sing and pray and rock back and forth there on the front porch of the old homestead there in Conover, North Carolina. And it was illiterate, couldn't read a lick or anything. But the family lore is that he had memorized passages of scripture because he used to make his children and grandchildren read them familiar passages of scripture, favorite passages of scripture over and over and over again. And so the old boy had put that in his heart. And, we don't have any record of any of his folks or siblings or anything like that, but he forged generations of some pretty strong, godly men and that did some pretty amazing things in the midst of, vicious racism and segregation and all of that stuff. And Peter serves as the anchor, for our family. So, it's pretty remarkable.
Wow. Yeah. One of the things I love about that is usually when we start to think about legacies, we think like these massive, big, grand things where everybody in the world knows your name, people read your books or something like that. And I love that the power of that legacy was simple faithfulness.
That's what it's all about.
Family.
That's what it's all about. Actually, faithfulness is its own marketing strategy, right? It's its own brand. And actually, when you scratch at things, no matter what it's whether it's in the entertainment industry and even in professional sports and all of that stuff, people see the platform, but they don't recognize the diligent process that goes behind that. So faithfulness, and I'm not, if your eyes are on greatness, chances are you're going to be frustrated. But if you're doing the next right thing, on your way to doing something, you're going to become something because your substance is going to be greater than the platform that you stand on.
That's good. I love that's good. Have there been any times throughout your ministry that that you feel like maybe you took your eyes off of that ball and how the Lord helped you to kind of course correct?
Oh yeah. we don't live in heaven and board down here, right? I mean, we're inconsistent. We're sinners. None of us are the fourth members of the Trinity.
Right.
And pride is subtle and insidious.
Mm.
And anybody that tells you that they've never struggled with pride, they've got another problem. They struggle with honesty and transparency.
Yeah.
So what ends up happening to all of us is that, visibility is very intoxicating.
Mm.
And it really is. And pride is so subtle and insidious. In fact, pride can appear to be as humility, even to the person who's proud.
Mm.
And you get used to strokes, and before you know it, you're cultivating your brand rather than being dependent upon the Lord and passionate about the impact.
Mm.
The subtle shift that takes place. And every once in a while, the Lord just has to come alongside, and said, okay, you kind of owned those compliments, didn't you, Crawford?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You thought you were all that stuff, right? And then he has to remind us of that.
Yeah.
But the trick is the trick is to cultivate a responsive heart to the Lord, so that when those times of woodshed moments take place in your life, you respond.
Yeah.
It is the idiot that doesn't respond.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I mean, I could all kinds of stuff, man. I remember this was like about maybe 9-10 years ago. It was just a series of things, and the books were going well, the radio stuff was going well, and all of this other kind of stuff, and I was, and I thought I was appropriately humble. And then I went to this event. It was a large event, and several of my friends were on the program. So I'm looking down, just reading the program, and I see Dr. So-and-so, Dr. So-and-so, Dr. So-and-so, and then I see Crawford Loritts. I said, wait a minute, man, I got some of these doctorates.
Wait a minute.
Oh, brother. No, you ain't positioning me right.
Uh-huh.
And the Holy Spirit starts speaking to me.
Mm.
Just precisely, what is your position, Crawford?
Right. Mm.
Who gave you what you have, buddy?
Right.
That's good.
So I think you just need to take this a little bit, because this is from me.
Right. Yeah.
Now, you're going to get up there with an attitude when you speak, or are you going to do what you need to do? So, yeah, man, I mean, that happens to all of us.
Yeah. Crawford, Dr. Crawford, right? Yeah, let me get
No, don't go down that road. Crawford's on my birth certificate. I don't want to get booked twice for the same thing, right?
Yeah. What are some of the things or some of the ways that, what are some of those, small, consistent acts of diligence that you've tried to put in through the years, right? What are some of those habits maybe that you try to put in, or that you've tried to pass down to your kids through the years, would be instructive for both of us in our 30s?
Oh yeah, man. I mean, there's a number of them. I think that the big piece is, I think the big piece we need to teach our kids is gratitude.
Mm.
Gratitude. Not just to be thankful. You can be thankful, but not grateful.
Mm.
You have to, because gratitude is attached to humility.
Mm.
And it's attached to humility, and it's attached to memory.
Mm.
Those two things are sort of like the incubator to gratitude. So looking back, one of the greatest things you can teach your kids is how to be grateful.
That's good.
And some of these, and Solomon says something, some folks, they were born on third base, and then they tell you they hit a triple.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So somebody put you there.
Right.
And so I think one of the things we try to do as a family is to tell the stories.
Mm.
Tell the stories of background, the struggles that the grandparents went through. Tell stories about Peter. Tell us in our own lives and this kind of thing. Talk about the privilege it is and the price that people have paid, and understand that your moment in history is not isolated from other moments.
Right.
You are here because somebody sacrificed.
Right.
and to continue to remind them of that, you know. And I think the other thing is get them involved in ministering to others as soon as they can.
Mm-hmm.
Get their eyes off of themselves. Yeah. And you know, and I think that the other thing is modeling before them your own brokenness.
Yeah.
As a parent. You know, Brian tweeted out something, our oldest, you know, you guys know Brian, my oldest son, and he tweeted out something a couple of weeks ago that brought tears in my eyes. He said, I remember my dad's apologies more than I remember his sins.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow. And I think, and what I'm trying to say is that I think modeling before your children, when you screw up, don't act like you're the fourth member of the Trinity.
Right.
You know, letting them see your humility and teaching them that, letting them see you serve and doing things rather than just the platform stuff.
Right. Yeah.
And so that they get this feeling that, you know, no, we don't deserve this. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think it's those kinds of things, connecting with their hearts and you know, it's hard for me to articulate this, but I think what our kids need to see is that we're not attached to how God uses us. We're attached to the God that uses us.
That's good. Yeah, that's really good.
And so that, you know, when they see that, and you have to have I tell younger leaders this, the way to be effective at the calling that God's given to you is to keep a detachment from that a little bit.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
It's a weird paradox, right? I mean, you guys know that. I mean, it's sort of like I'm most useful to God when I realize that the gift is not the destination.
Yeah.
It's God using me in that moment. That's the destination.
Yeah.
And so I think letting your kids see that about you, because the truth of the matter is none of us are as good as the way God uses us, okay?
Amen. Amen. I mean, some of my worst sermons will be, isn't it humbling when you like, I did a terrible job. You feel ashamed, and someone is like, that's the best I've ever heard you. It changed my life. You're like, why am I sweating in my office every week?
Right.
But to me, it's those reminders from God, like, yeah, that wasn't you anyway. Like,
that's exactly right.
And you putting my word before people, whether you were as prepared as you wanted, you said it how you wanted it to. I'm on the word.
Yeah, well, that is so good. But sometimes it takes some of us until we're 60, 70 years old to get it, right? But I think it's those things, you know, the greatest thing that you can teach your kids is not necessarily a sequential strategy, but model the destination in front of them.
Yeah.
You know, because all of parenting is prophetic, right? I mean, we're the portrait of the desired destination at which we want them to arrive.
Yeah.
And so I think when they see that wholeness about us, you know, I chuckle sometimes. I'm talking too much here, but I chuckle sometimes, you know. You guys have all the strategies and the conferences and, you know, the how-tos here and the podcasts and this kind of stuff. Yeah. You know, my father and them, they ain't had none of that stuff. He ain't read no book or no family. He ain't read no article about family, unless it was close to the sports page, you know. So, but what they had were they had models that imprinted them.
Yeah.
That was inescapable. And I think, you know, all this stuff is helpful. Don't get me wrong. I mean, my wife and I, we both wrote a book on the family and all this stuff. All that stuff is helpful. But I think you never underestimate the power of your own transformed life, projecting truth that becomes compelling to their hearts. I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. One thing I was going to ask is, throughout your ministry, as you served in, you know, a number of different ways, different organizations and different churches, how have you fought to keep from I don't know, surely there have been people who don't like the way you do it in various places, or wish you were more like this or like that, or, you know, some people that you admired that didn't fit. I don't know, like, how have you tried to fight a desire to please others shaping how you do your ministry? Is there just anything?
Oh man, yeah. That is a core question. That is a great question. You know, so what you discover over time, I think you have to hold these three things in tension. Number one, you have to slay your own defensiveness. Okay, you have to slay your own defensiveness and realize that, you know, even with criticism and attack or disagreement, this kind of thing, the devil may have brought it, but the Lord sent it. And so the quicker that I can focus on what is the 5% out of all this crap here that's right, and own that. And so that's one tension point.
Right.
The other tension point is that humility is not the lack of confidence. In fact, I argue that it takes confidence to be humble.
That's good.
It takes confidence to be humble. And I think that you need to navigate through these spaces with a sense of God's calling on your life.
Yeah.
And you got to be careful that you don't commit idolization. You don't empower the structures that you serve in or the other leaders around you, particularly if you're serving in predominantly white organizations. You got to be careful that you don't succumb to white idolization. And you have to have a strong sense that God's hand is on you. God gave you the seat at the table. So stop being mealy mouthed. Take your seat at the table. And you know, there's only one God that you serve. Now, you don't have to be bombastic or this kind of thing. But I think it's a sense of God confidence that you have to develop. And that if God called you there, he equipped you to be there. Now, you have to slay this whole people-pleasing thing. People-pleasing thing will blow up on you every single time. And people who get mired in people-pleasing, they end up hating themselves. Is the irony. Because you end up feeling like a whore. You end up feeling as if, you know, and you can't go down that road. So you have to have a sense of your own principles, a sense of your own convictions, and clarity about your own calling. And realize, and you approach these things with a dependence upon the Lord. But I want you to like me, but my calling is not to manage your happiness.
That's good.
That's good.
That's good.
And I'm not talking about being unkind, but I'm not called to manage your happiness at the end of the day. I am called to do what God wants me to do and to love you profoundly and to do all that I can to help you. But ultimately, your response or your criticism is not determinative in my life. And so you just have to get to that place where you understand that what God has for you, no mortal being can take from you. You don't have to compete or compare. Good meat makes its own gravy. Just do what you need to do. And the doors will be open, but you just can't do it. You just can't do it. I've seen so many of my colleagues bitter. The end result after, you get to be about 40, 50, 60 years old, and you've been trying to please everybody. Then it dawns on you one day that you've really been a jerk. You've been the one that has neglected what God's called you to be about, and now you're mad. Now you're mad. Now you're bitter. Now you're blaming everybody else. If that hadn't happened, I would have been here. This should have happened. I would have been there. And we've met people like that. All of us have. But you can't do that. Nobody is another thing that I've come to, and I tell younger leaders this all the time, that never abdicate your will to anybody. You don't abdicate your will to anybody. Ultimately, your will belongs to you and God. Now you serve people.
That's good.
But you don't get in situations where you put yourself under the control of anybody.
Yeah.
Now, let me balance that by saying all of us should be held accountable, this kind of thing. And I'm not talking about that.
Yeah.
But what I am saying is that what God has for you, you need to pursue that.
Right.
And the people around you need to have a sense that you're not owned.
Mm.
And oddly enough, that's how you bring value to any organization or any institution. Look, you can't impact that which you worship. It will always change you. Okay.
Yeah.
And people pleasing is a form of worship.
Yeah.
And you got to slay that thing, man. You just, and it's hard. And the truth of the matter is, all of us in ministry, all of us who are effective at any degree of relating to audiences, I have not met any of us that didn't have a level or a degree of people pleasing in us.
Yeah. And when we are good communicators and we are self-aware, we're good at it.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what we want to do. We know how to do it.
That's exactly right. And what makes a comedian or any great person that can work an audience, whether it's Steve Harvey or anybody else, there's a degree of people pleasing because you
Right.
studied enough, you know how to position what you have to say to get the response, right?
Yeah.
Preaching is the same way.
Right.
Yeah.
But unless you need to know how people respond. I'm not saying that you should, but unless you get to a place that can change you, man.
Yeah.
And you don't need to be there. Yeah.
Are there helpful ways to think about what legacy you'll leave behind, and are there unhelpful ways? How do you navigate that? How do you start to think about, okay, what kind of legacy am I going to leave behind without doing it in a way that's just alone people pleasing, or that is, ignoring stuff Solomon says, like, no one's going to remember you anyway. Sun rose and set before you was around. But are there helpful ways to think about what kind of legacy we leave behind?
Yeah, I think one of the ways of thinking about it is to embrace the reality that we are going to leave a legacy.
Yeah.
That ain't on the table.
Yeah.
If you're breathing, living, and people have been influenced, you're going to leave a legacy. The question is, what kind?
That's excellent. Mm.
That's the question. Okay. So you have to live life with great intentionality.
Mm.
And you have to live life with an understanding. What do I want 5, 10 generations down the road to look like based upon the decisions I make right now?
Mm-hmm.
And all of life is, the purpose of life is to steward the image of God from one generation to the next.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't make your kids or those that love you or close to you, you can't make them walk with God, but you can set the table.
Yeah, that's good.
And so Psalm 78 verses 5-7 is the Psalm of Asaph. And he says in verse 5, for he established a testimony and appointed a law. And those are the two things that we need to centerpiece our families on. The testimony is the character of God, and appointing a law that has to do with the content of Scripture. So I think we need to live, model, and feed those who are close to us with that in authentic ways, and do it with a passionate way that integrates it into all of their lives.
Yeah.
So to me, it's not rocket science. I think that's what my great grandfather did. That's what my granddad did. That's what my father did. And, you're sending messages to a time that you cannot see.
Right.
And that's a part of your life that's out of your control. You are going to send a message to a time that you can't see.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say.
Really good.
I think that it's special too, and why I really wanted you to start off the time to talk about your great grandpa is just that. Like, you described his life and his impact in the type of vivid language that people describe relatives that they met.
Yes.
So even though you never shared the same time and space with him, his impact was so potent that even as you relay it through this Zoom call, I can close my eyes and picture and see it. And as you share that, it's like I see the fingerprints of your great grandpa on you and on Brian and Brendan and the rest of the group. And so it is just
encouraging and a challenge. Like it has me starting to think of, all right, yeah, what are the oak trees that I'm going to plant that I'll never sit in the shade of? And I want to make sure that, that my great grandkids.
But you know what I love about this conversation with you guys, and forgive me for my age shown here, but I love it that you dudes are having this conversation now.
Right.
That just blesses me, man.
Yeah.
It's not when you're 60 or 70 years old. And this is where the conversations need to be had right now. That, the truth of the matter is, I mean, we took a bunch of grandkids to Disney here the other month and all of this other kind of stuff. And, you're going to do, but, the next generation ain't going to remember that.
Yeah. Right.
They ain't going to remember the ball games. They ain't going to remember the picnics. They ain't going to remember the vacations. They're not going to remember all the stuff that we spent a whole lot of money on. Right.
Right.
But it's going to be the stuff that is eternal.
Yeah.
That's enduring. And when they face their crisis in life, they might pick up their grandfather's journal.
Yeah.
And say, how did Papa walk through these things?
Yeah.
And it will be those messages that the character of God and the content of Scripture.
Yeah.
That's the stuff that we need to live for. And that's the stuff that we need to continue to pass on from one generation. The close of the next generation will be different than ours. But eternity is eternity, man.
Right.
Truth is truth. And that's what we need to get back to.
Yeah.
No, this is super helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This was the convo we wanted to have. And even like if this recording got lost, this would still have been a good use of my time.
Right.
Because your wisdom is super helpful. And
oh man. Well, I love you guys, man. I'm your cheerleader. I just you guys don't let anybody take you off the wall, man. Keep standing for Jesus and doing what you know is right. Don't let the left or the right define who you are. Mm-hmm. Let the truth be your guide. Let the chips fall where they may, brother.
Chapter 3, freedom to be faithful.
One of the weird things about being a rapper is that part of my job is to draw attention to myself.
Right.
This is why like people would, like my first album, my first song is Give 'Em Glory, and my second album, Superstar, It's like, I feel the tension of this.
Yeah.
That I'm like, hey, I'm going to be at this place. I'm going to stand on stage. Everybody watch me.
Right.
While also saying, no, my whole heart is to point you elsewhere. There's a weirdness to that. It's like, I don't know. It's just strange.
Yeah.
It's just a thing to have to navigate. This is always asking myself questions about why am I really doing this? Is it because of this?
Yeah.
Or do I really have, or is my heart really in the right place?
Do you ever feel like, so I mean, I know there's health stuff that makes you second guess some of the things that you do. Should I really do this because of my health? Is there anything that makes you feel like, man, maybe I don't need to do this because of my heart? Like, should I continue to do this?
It's a good question. It's not that I've never asked myself that.
Right, yeah.
But
it's like, no,
but
absolutely nothing.
But not usually.
Right, yeah.
That's not, my pride struggle is, the ways that I want people to think I'm great aren't as much associated with a lot of people knowing who I am.
Right.
So they would follow me even if I was doing something in obscurity.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Now, I definitely don't take for granted that people always care about what I'm doing.
Right.
It's just like, as long as they do, I want to use it well.
Right.
But yeah. I mean, but Show Baraka, always when we started, like I feel like every other month he was like, I don't know if I should do this or not. But it was him examining his heart like, it's not worth me damaging my soul to follow this dream. If I can't do it in a healthy way, I don't really want to do it.
Wow.
And it was one of the many ways of like watching Show just want to live honestly so bad.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like
yeah.
he's just not the dude who's gonna pretend or just do something just cause. Yeah. He does things wholeheartedly from a sincere place. Yeah. You know, one of the like legacy things that popped up in my head was Steph and the Warriors just win another championship, right? They win their fourth. And people are like, I don't know. It's almost like people all of a sudden acting like, oh, he really was great this whole time. Look at that. Now there is something unique about them, like going away and coming back. Right. You know, I told him this was my favorite one to watch. This is my favorite championship run to watch. In part because everybody was just and to like get back with that original core, you know what I'm saying, it was really dope, especially to watch. But you know, he gets the Finals MVP this time. People are like, oh, now we can. Right. And it's like, you can't dictate what your legacy is gonna be. Right. Now, like there is something about what he's accomplished this time, each time, that can show people more and more how we should think of him amongst basketball greats. But it is like, if we spend too much time just trying to write out a perfect legacy, like I remember a game when LeBron got hurt and he was like, now I'm a LeBron fan, so I don't want the people to think I'm like, hey, no, LeBron. Like I'm a LeBron fan. He is, in my opinion, the second greatest player of all time. Yeah. Undisputed. It's not a question.
Which is not a knock.
No. I wasn't
That's great.
Yeah. He's incredible. Yeah. He do sometimes be like, it was like he was really wanting a flu game really bad. And he like wanted us to know how injured he was so we could marvel at it, which is just funny. But we can't manufacture how everybody's going to think about us. Right. We just can't. And this is why like the best way to have a good legacy is not to think about how people will view you, but to think about the impact you will have on others. Not remember my name, but let me live in such a way that there's an impact that lasts.
That's good, bro.
That's the legacy I want to be after.
It is the difference between, you remember Kobe's last season?
Yes. Yeah.
Where he did the thing, the tour, you know, he had fun. Yeah. And you remember Paul Pierce's last season?
I sure do. And I remember Draymond
saying, you not Kobe.
They don't love you like that.
They don't love it. No, but it's that thing, bro. It's like, like I think of Coach K announcing before the year that he's going to retire. And who was the other college coach? Jay Wright is still coaching at Villanova. There was another coach, legendary coach. And then after the season, he said, that was my last season.
Yeah.
Again, it's not a shade, it's no knock, but it's two different ways of approaching it. One is saying, no, listen, my impact is going to be what it is. So in the last hurrah, right? Yeah. I'm spending my time like making sure the focus is not on me. Yeah. And I can just do the work and not be a distraction. I think the hard thing is, in the day and age we live now, is, and I'm saying this, having just done a documentary for my book, but this is not what I'm saying. Everybody is hyper aware of their stuff, right? So it's like people are making the documentary or making the autobiography of their life and making sure to chronicle all of this for a later time in which they will produce. And that's the wrong way, I think, to go about making a legacy.
Yeah. Have you... It's like we want to write our story while it's happening. Right. And at each point, we're like, no, it's going to be fire for chapter 7, bro. When we get to this turning point. And it's weird. And it's just one of the things that comes with our new age. We just got to navigate. You ever been like journaling and you like, oh, I wonder if somebody's going to see this. Like, oh, my kids might read this one day.
Redacted. So there's certain times where it's like, I'll generalize certain things in my journal because it's like, 9 years from now, I don't want people to see this. And
like, and I'm wrestling with doubt. Not very serious doubt, just a slight wondering. But anyway.
Medium doubt.
Yeah. Yeah, bro. And it's really just, not only is it better to just focus on living faithfully, it's freeing.
Yeah.
To not have to like be your own PR person.
I know.
So worried at every turn, did I come off right? It's like, it's a lot more freeing to just be.
Yep.
Be faithful. One thing, you're not in charge of how people perceive you anyway.
Right.
And then like Solomon reminds us, like, there will come a time when don't nobody know who you are. I was trying to explain this to my kids. They was like, no, Michael Jackson. I was like, there will come a time when nobody will know that name.
Right.
It's just not, it don't matter what you achieve. I remember a pastor friend in DC, he was like, you walk around DC, you see all these monuments and you walk past them and it's somebody who's so important that it was commissioned for somebody to carve a likeness of them in some precious stone, marble or something. And we walk, and in the capital of the United States, we walk by, we don't know who that dude is. I read his name, I still don't know who you are. My only hope is to look you up somewhere else. You did great things, maybe. Stuff that made people want to remember you. You had a crazy impact and influence. I have no idea who you are. And knowing who you are will make no impact on my life. And it's like, it's a good reminder that trying to live to like climb some ladder of importance so people remember my name is useless. It's chasing after wind. Not a good use of our time. Let's just like try to go be faithful and let God take care of all that stuff. The End.Notes podcast is presented by Our Daily Bread's Voices Collection, and that Voices Collection is meant to share Black Christian stories of faith through resources and conversations, all Bible-centered, to help try to make God's word understandable for everybody and accessible to everybody. So if you want to know more about Our Daily Bread's Voices Collection, you can go to experiencevoices.org.